Segnali di obbligo.
Mandatory signs. Mandatory signs belong to the category of mandatory signs. They are generally installed at the point where the prescription begins. However, they can be supplemented by panels indicating a different distance or an extension of the prescription for a certain stretch of road.
Direzione obbligatoria diritto.
Mandatory direction, straight. This is a prescription sign, an obligation that imposes mandatory direction. Straight. We find it before an intersection and it forces us to continue straight. So it does not allow turning to the right or left.
Direzione obbligatoria a sinistra.
In the mandatory direction to the left. This prescription sign, placed before an intersection, forces you to turn left. It therefore does not allow you to continue straight or to turn right.
Preavviso di direzione obbligatoria a sinistra.
Mandatory direction notice on the left. This sign forces you to turn left. It is placed before an intersection and precedes a mandatory direction sign on the left. At the next intersection it will be forbidden to continue straight. Can be integrated with a panel indicating the distance from the point where the obligation applies.
Direzione obbligatoria a destra.
Mandatory directions to the right. This sign, placed before an intersection, requires you to turn right. It does not allow you to go straight and turn left. We pay attention in the quizzes. It is not a one-way sign, so it does not exclude the possibility of finding vehicles coming from the opposite direction when turning to the right.
Preavviso di direzione obbligatoria a destra.
Mandatory direction notice on the right. This sign announces the obligation to turn right at the next intersection, prohibiting the next intersection from continuing straight or turning left. It can be integrated with a panel that indicates the distance from the mandatory point and precedes a mandatory direction sign on the right.
Preavviso di direzione obbligatoria per autocarri in transito.
Mandatory direction notice for lorries in transit. This signal heralds a mandatory right turn for trucks with a mass over 3.5 tons. Therefore, it is forbidden to continue straight to turn left to the vehicles represented in the sign itself.
Direzioni consentite, destra e sinistra.
Allowed directions. Right and left. This is a mandatory prescription sign that indicates the allowed directions left and right. So at the intersection it is not allowed to go straight on, but you can choose between the two possible directions allowed.
Direzioni consentite diritto e destra.
Straight to the right. This sign forces you to go straight on or turn right at the intersection, so it does not allow you to turn left, but you can choose between the two possible directions right and left.
Direzioni consentite diritto e sinistra.
This is a prescription sign that only allows you to continue straight or turn left and does not allow for a right turn.
Passaggio obbligatorio a sinistra.
Obligatory step to the left. This mandatory sign forces drivers to pass to the left of an obstacle, such as a traffic island or central reservation, a life preserver, or a road construction site. He then prescribes to overcome the obstacle on the left side, leaving the obstacle on the right.
Passaggio obbligatorio a destra.
Obligatory step to the right. Instead, this signal forces drivers to pass to the right of an obstacle placed in the presence of a traffic island, a life jacket, or a road construction site. It forces us to pass to the right, leaving the obstacle on our left.
Passaggi consentiti.
Steps allowed. This mandatory sign indicates to the driver the only permitted passages. It therefore allows you to move both to the right and to the left with respect to a life preserver, a traffic island or a road construction site.
Rotatoria.
Roundabout. The sign shown indicates a regulated intersection with roundabout traffic. Therefore, it prescribes the obligation to circulate according to the direction indicated by the arrows. Therefore, it is absolutely forbidden to move in the opposite direction to the arrows. Please note that the sign is placed on the right side before the exit in the roundabout and not in the column in the center and can be integrated with the mandatory passage sign on the right. In the case of extra-urban roads, the signal in the figure is preceded by the B signal, which announces the presence of the intersection with roundabout circulation.
Limite minimo di velocità 30 km/h.
Minimum speed limit of 30 km per hour. This mandatory sign indicates the speed limit below which it is forbidden to drive. It requires driving at a speed of at least 30 km per hour and therefore prohibits the transit of vehicles that are unable to comply with the prescription.
Fine limite minimo di velocità 30 km orari.
The minimum speed limit at 30 km per hour finished. The sign shown indicates that it is no longer mandatory to drive at a speed at least equal to that indicated. It is an end of prescription signal, so it allows you to travel at a lower and higher speed than indicated. In any case, within the maximum speed limits in force for that road.
Catene da neve obbligatorie.
Snow chains mandatory. This sign indicates that driving is only permitted with snow chains or tires. It is found on roads that in particular conditions are covered with snow or ice and that require you to proceed with particular caution.
Percorso pedonale.
Pedestrian path. This sign indicates a pedestrian path, valid both day and night and does not allow the transit of vehicles, including bicycles.
Fine percorso pedonale.
End of the pedestrian path. This sign is placed at the end of a pedestrian path. However, it allows pedestrians to continue after the signal, while paying attention to the presence of vehicles.
Pista ciclabile.
Bicycle lane. The sign shown is placed in correspondence with a path reserved only for bicycles, therefore the transit of cars and motorcycles will not be allowed, therefore also the simultaneous transit of pedestrians.
Fine pista ciclabile.
End of the cycle path. This sign is placed at the end of a track reserved for bicycles. Attention in the quizzes does not prohibit the transit of bicycles that can still circulate, paying attention to other vehicles.
Pista ciclabile contigua al marciapiede.
Bike path contiguous to the sidewalk. This sign is placed at the beginning of a track reserved for bicycles, flanked by a pedestrian path or a sidewalk. It does not allow motor vehicles to circulate and requires pedestrians and cyclists to circulate each on their own path.
Fine della pista ciclabile contigua al marciapiede.
End of the cycle path adjacent to the sidewalk. This sign is placed at the end of the cycle path, next to a path reserved for pedestrians. It still allows pedestrians and cyclists to circulate, paying attention to the presence of other vehicles.
Percorso unico pedonale e ciclabile.
Single pedestrian and cycle path. This sign is placed in correspondence with a single path for pedestrians and cyclists, where bicycles and pedestrians are to circulate together in that reserved path. It will not be allowed to circulate with motor vehicles.
Fine percorso pedonale e ciclabile.
End of pedestrian and cycle path. This sign is placed at the end of the path reserved for the mixed circulation of pedestrians and cyclists.
Percorso riservato ai quadrupedi da soma e da sella.
Path reserved for pack and saddle quadrupeds. This sign is placed at the beginning of a path reserved only for saddle and pack animals, therefore, it does not allow the transit of vehicles with and without engines. Attention in the quizzes. The signal does not concern any precedence to animals, as it is a path reserved for the end of the path reserved for quadrupeds by Somali from saddle.
Fine percorso riservato ai quadrupedi da soma e da sella.
This sign is placed at the end of the path reserved for pack and saddle animals. It still allows you to continue horseback, paying attention to the presence of vehicles.
Halt, dogana.
Halt customs. This signal heralds a border crossing at which it is mandatory to stop for customs control, even if you do not have objects or goods to declare. It is located on the border with a country that is not part of the European Community. Attention in the quizzes. We do not speak of a police station or carabinieri, but of a customs gate.
Halt, polizia.
Halt police. This sign heralds a roadblock set up by police bodies at which it is mandatory to stop. Located at a suitable distance from the checkpoint and repeated at the stopping point, it forces you to stop at that point, even without any other signal from the agents.
Halt stazione.
Other stations. This sign is placed at the controlled motorway accesses, where it is mandatory to stop for toll operations such as ticket collection and payment.